You've been gaslighted. You know, I've asked a lot of people, do you think you have free will? Is everything determined? Well, they might say, well, some things are determined, and I would agree with that. If we are predisposed by our chemical reactions to believe something, then telling me something in contradiction to my own beliefs won't do anything. The only way you could change my mind is to change my brain. Well, that sounds like lobotomy. Well, it does. And the point is, you can't have it both ways. Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. Dan Arsenal here. We're doing a series of episodes here regarding atheism and theism. And we're making the case, of course, that theism is much more evidenced inside and outside and everywhere else than atheism is. This episode, we're going to call it gaslighting, and you'll see why. Or you might even call it gaslighting atheists, and you'll see why in just a bit. In 1944, there was a movie made called Gaslight, and it starred Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. And in the movie, they got married, and then they went back to London for their home, and then strange things began to happen in the household there. And the bottom line, we'll jump ahead here, that there's something, what's that called when we know what that actors don't know. What the bottom line is that the husband was trying to make his wife go insane. He was trying to make her consider herself as insane. Something's wrong with her. Well, all these strange things started happening that she thought were real, and he said, no, this is not happening. Well, one of the things that kept happening was, of course, they had gas lights at that point in time, and the gas lights kept flickering. And so it became a very common knowledge that if you're being manipulated in some way, if somebody's trying to get you to believe something that is not possibly true, it's called gaslighting. Think about it. That's what happened. Of course, maybe the illusion was that's what happened in Nazi Germany. It's happened in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. But the idea of gaslighting is it means that you're being manipulated. Watch out. Let me start with the idea of what it means to be an atheist. Of course, there is no God, and there is no supernatural, and there is no immaterial. Everything is matter. So from atheism, the logical position is we would call materialism. In other words, nothing exists except matter. So you come from materialism then, that means that everything that we experience has to be explained, if we can explain it. It has to be explained by natural law, by natural means. And so it's like two sides of the same coin. Materialism, nothing exists except matter, and then flip the coin over. Naturalism, nothing happens that's not natural. Naturalism. So you have materialism and naturalism here. Now, here's where you're getting gaslighted. Well, you've already been gaslighted if you believe that, I think. Maybe a gaslighter yourself. If those are true, if materialism and naturalism are true, then there's no such thing as a mind. You only have a brain, because the brain is physical, the mind is not. There's nothing that exists that's not physical on materialism. Free will doesn't exist. We do not make choices because we don't have a mind. We're not really conscious. We're not really a person. What we are is simply matter in motion. We are atoms and molecules, and that's it. And my point is this: that's exactly what atheism must logically say. And they do logically say that. Richard Dawkins, let me give you a couple of quotes from him, and then I'll add my 2 cents worth going on. Richard Dawkins says that just like robots or machines that can be programmed, they can do a lot of pretty impressive things. They can avoid obstacles. They can even have conversations, but they're programmed. They're not persons. And what Richard Dawkins says is that's exactly how we are. We are biological machines, and we have no free will. We are not making choices at all, because everything is determined by natural law, naturalism and materialism. That means that we are, in his view, it's called dancing to our DNA, which means we are living our lives. We're not making decisions. We are being determined by the chemical reactions within our bodies, our brains, and we're simply following the path that is prescribed for us by those natural reactions, by chemistry, you might say, chemistry and biology. And let me give you the quote here. Richard Dawkins says, "We and all other animals are machines created by their genes." Which is our DNA, of course, which is our chemicals, of course, which is chemistry. So we don't have any free will. We're just predetermined chemically to do what we do, say what we say, think what we think, believe what we believe. Now, Richard Dawkins is not the only one who thinks that. Stephen Hawking said the same thing. And to quote him, rather than give you the whole speech, here's what he says. He says that free will is an illusion. Think about this. Free will, it's just non-existent, but it's an illusion. In other words, we think we have free will, but we don't really have free will. We are determined, and that's what he said. If you think that's wacky, if you think that's just not true, that you know that you make thousands of decisions every day that could have done otherwise if you had so chosen to go otherwise, what socks you wore, what shirt you wore, etc., 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 etc. It's just normal, common sense. And so if somebody tries to tell me that I don't have free will, I want to ask them the first question here. How did you come to that decision? How did you come to the conclusion that you and I don't have free will? Well, they'll say, obvious. It's obvious by reason and evidence. It's science tells us that we don't have free will. Whoa. You can't bring science into it. Science is the scientific method. It involves all kinds of choices and free will and mental aerobics, let's say. If you made your decision that you don't have free will, that everything is determined, then your decision was determined too. Has nothing with truth to do with it. It has nothing to do with this reason and evidence and doing our job, so to speak, and trying to do a good job and trying to do scientific inquiry. If materialism is true and you don't have free will, then your decision, your conclusion is no more valid than mine. I believe in, and let me tell you this, years ago, I went to a Unitarian Universalist church by invitation to sort of make the case for Christianity. And I was thankful that they were willing to do that. And they had an open mind about things at that point in time. But when I got there, I stayed at somebody's home. And the first thing that happened is they gave me a Newsweek, I think it was Newsweek, it might have been U.S. News and World Report. I think it was Newsweek. They gave him a magazine, and the title article is this: The Religious Gene. And here you go. Here's the obvious thing. The reason on their view, the reason that I'm religious is that I'm genetically disposed to believe in God. My first reaction then is, okay, if this is true, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If I'm religious, hence a theistic guy, and a Christian, then if I'm geared that way, not by choice, I have no choices here, I'm chemically predisposed to that, then you are equally predisposed to be an atheist. You are equally predisposed to disbelieve those things. So truth doesn't ever enter into it. It's just what you're wired to do. But that's not what they say. It's almost like, here's what they've done. They've refuted themselves. They've made themselves outside of their own conclusions in order to make that conclusion. Richard Dawkins, in example, in his book, The God Delusion, I read it twice, and he makes the case in his foreword or introduction there. He says, my hope is that after you have read this book, if you have believed in God, you will stop believing in God. In other words, I'm going to make a case against theism, and if you read this honestly, you will become an atheist after you do this. Well, wait a minute. If we are predisposed by our chemical reactions to believe something, then me telling me something in contradiction to my own beliefs won't do anything. The only way you could change my mind is to change my brain. Well, that sounds like lobotomy. Well, it does. And the point is, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that we don't have any free will and then try to change my mind about things which you say doesn't exist in the first place. I hope you get this. It is just so simple. You've been gaslighted. If you think you don't have any free will, and I've asked a lot of people, do you think you have free will? Is everything determined? Well, they might say, well, some things are determined. And I would agree with that. I mean, obviously we have influences that are outside of our control, certainly. But that's the whole point. Despite all of those chemical, biological, physical, scientific, natural instincts that we have, we still can make a choice to do otherwise. And that seems so obvious. If and I'll just say this, if you really believe that, I don't know what to think about you. It gets worse. And I'm going to stop, but it gets worse. Here's what Stephen Hawking said. Now listen to this carefully. And remember, he thinks that we don't have free will. Free will is an illusion. But he says that nature has given us the illusion of free will, because if we didn't think we had free will, then society would be destroyed. What? So we're supposed to, now think about this. Think about the obvious self-defeating circular argument here. So we don't have free will, but we really think we do because nature has given us that free will so that we will survive. It's a better survival instinct to have free. But wait a minute, he doesn't think that. He thinks it's an illusion. And then he turns around and says, but now I'm supposed to have the illusion naturally so that people will survive. And the whole point of that is this: if we don't have free will, then we're not responsible for anything. And so if I'm not responsible, then you can't judge me for anything that I've done, good or evil, because actually that's how I'm wired, That's just, no matter what I do, no matter what you do, we could not have done otherwise. That's what no free will means. But now he's saying that nature assigns us an illusion so that we common sense will out in the long run. So don't be gaslighted. I'm going to have another episode about what else we're being gaslighted about that's so obvious, so common sense. And here's what listen, I'll finish with this. God has given us the human experience to show that we actually are created for a purpose by an eternal, omnipotent, omniscient, loving God. And part of that experience is that we are persons. God is a person. He's three persons. God is conscious, and so we're made in His image. And you have free will because God has free will, because He has given us the ability to do that, to make rational decisions, not based on chemistry, but based on truth, based on logic, based on reason, and based on our own will. I know you know this. I hope you'll think about it. Thanks for watching.